Oh, hello, you quiet devastators of fragile egos, you silent storms cloaked in skin. You don't scream, you don't shatter windows with your rage. You just walk into the room and people stop breathing. You hit where it hurts, not loud, not fast, but precise. And now, they're shaking, not because you roared, but because you whispered truth through clenched teeth. Let them sit there, let them squirm, let them rewatch every moment when they thought you were too calm to be dangerous. They mistook your silence for softness. They saw you sip your coffee while chaos brewed behind your eyes. They mistook stillness for surrender. Fools. They never realized that the eye of the storm is the most deceptive part. The quiet doesn't mean peace. It means focus. And you, my friend, you were calculating. They underestimated the burn of cold vengeance. They thought punishment had to be loud, that justice had to be theatrical. But you didn't break character. You let them play their games, all while sharpening the blade behind your back. And when you struck, you didn't aim for flesh. You went for the soul. No fireworks, just a slow unraveling. You didn't tear their world down. You made them watch it collapse, brick by brick, and question whether they pulled the first stone. You made them doubt their version of the truth. That's not revenge. That's art. And you're not a fighter. You're a sculptor of pain. Every move you make is measured, surgical. You don't destroy to destroy. You destroy to redefine. They whispered lies into crowds. You spoke silence into reality. They lit fires with gossip. You extinguished names with facts. No war paint. No yelling matches, just a slow, suffocating truth that clings to their conscience like smoke in the lungs. Because when you hit, you make sure it echoes. Now they're shaking, not because they lost, but because you didn't even play the same game. While they were playing checkers, you disassembled the board, and they're still trying to understand when you took their queen. You didn't need noise. You had patience, and patience. That's what terrifies them. You see, in this world, people fear what they can't provoke. They know how to fight anger. But silence? That's a puzzle they can't solve. They tried to poke you, prod you, bait you into a breakdown. But you didn't flinch. You turned your back and built an empire from ashes. And now, they look around and realize you were never gone. You were waiting. Your absence wasn't retreat. It was a recalibration, a repositioning of every broken piece they thought they shattered in you. But those weren't cracks, were they? Those were openings, gateways, windows to the hell you were forging with every insult, every dismissal, every casual betrayal they tossed like coins into your chest. And now those coins, they've turned to blades. Every word you didn't say is now a wound in them. Every moment you walked away is now a curse that follows them through hallways and dreams. You didn't become louder, you became heavier. And that's why they tremble. Because you don't knock on doors, you haunt them. They try to replicate your methods now. They mimic your silence, copy your calm. But imitation without understanding, it's empty. They look like statues beside you, but they don't carry the weight. You earned your stillness. It wasn't gifted. It was carved from storms. They talk about peace like it's a slogan. You wear it like armor. Your peace isn't absence of conflict. It's the decision to no longer engage with cowards. And that frightens them. Because when a warrior walks off the battlefield on their own terms, the war doesn't end. It moves inside the heads of the enemy. You didn't come back for applause. You came back to remind them that not every punishment is loud. Some punishments are quiet observations that leave people questioning their entire existence. And now, they sit in their rooms, wondering what part of you they misread. Where did they go wrong? Which moment did they mistake grace for weakness? You didn't burn bridges. You collapsed their maps. You removed the compass they thought would lead back to you. And now they wander, lost, trying to retrace steps in a forest you've already replaced with steel. The path to you no longer exists. And that's the real sentence. That's the punishment they never saw coming. They try to apologize now, half-hearted words coated in desperation. But you don't deal in apologies. You deal in outcomes. And the outcome? Their empire trembles. Their alliances fracture. Their own shadows feel heavier. Because when you struck, you didn't need to scream. You let consequence speak for you. You could have ruined them publicly. You didn't. And that grace, that's what haunts them most. Because if you had exposed everything, at least they'd know where the bullet came from. But you let them destroy themselves slowly. Now every rumor that reaches their ears feels like a dagger. They don't know if it came from you, or if it came from karma. But in the end, what's the difference? You became a mirror. You didn't punish them. You made them see themselves. And for people like them, that's the worst fate imaginable. You didn't yell. You didn't chase. You simply stood still, and they crumbled, trying to outrun your silence. But here's the twist, the beautiful, wicked twist. You're not done. No, this wasn't your climax. This was the opening act. They think the tremors are the earthquake, but they haven't seen the fault line yet. They haven't seen what's rising beneath their feet. Because while they tremble, while they whisper, while they beg others to figure you out, you're already 10 steps ahead, already crafting the next move, already shaping the future where their relevance doesn't even exist. You're not reacting anymore. You're orchestrating. You're not answering their questions. You're writing new ones in languages they can't read. They tried to write you off. Now they study your silence like scripture. And still, they understand nothing. Because to understand you, they'd have to walk through the fire that forged you. And they can't. They never could. That's why they tried to pull you down instead of rise themselves. But now they're beneath you. Not because you stepped on them, but because they dug their own graves trying to bury your name. You didn't fight back. You rose above. And in rising, you didn't just escape their reach. You erased their value. The silence you held, it wasn't weakness. It was the calm of a mind that already saw the end. You weren't walking away. You were ascending. And as you ascend, part of you smiles. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. Because finally, everything they thought they controlled slips through their fingers like dust. And while they sit there, trembling, trying to map out your next move, you're already somewhere else, somewhere higher, sharper, colder, where storms are born and shadows kneel. And this is just the beginning. You see, when the silence fades and the dust begins to settle, something more dangerous emerges. Not the echo of what you did, but the realization of what you became. They thought you were a moment, a spark, a one-time strike. But now they see you weren't the weapon. You were the ignition. And the fire, it's spreading, quietly, methodically, like smoke under a locked door. They tried to seal you out. Now they're choking on what seeped in. They stare at the mirror and find the lines deeper, the sleep shorter, the thoughts heavier. Not because you haunt them like a ghost, but because you changed the temperature of the room they thought they owned. They walk through their castles now like trespassers. Every step echoes your silence. Every glance over the shoulder is a question they can't answer. Are you watching? Are you still close? Is this the moment you strike again? You see, power doesn't always wear a crown. Sometimes it wears restraint. Sometimes it walks slowly, deliberately, carrying the weight of unspoken vengeance that needs no announcement. You learned that. You became that. While they spent their energy lighting matches for show, you became the wildfire that doesn't need applause. And the beauty of it? You still haven't raised your voice. Because real destruction doesn't arrive with fanfare. It arrives with understanding. You understood their weaknesses better than they did. You knew where their armor was just painted on, where their smiles were stitched by fear. You studied them, not to destroy them, but to unmake them. And unmaking is an art. It takes time, it takes patience, and it takes the kind of pain you've tasted more than once. They fear you now not because you hurt them, but because you exposed what was always broken. You didn't create their downfall, you just revealed it. That's what eats them alive. That's why they can't sleep. You became a lighthouse in their storm, and they realized their ship was already sinking. You didn't throw them overboard, you just showed them the water rising. And the most terrifying truth, you never wanted to win. You didn't care about their games, their applause, their positions on pedestals built by illusion. You walked away from all of it, and in doing so, you did what they never could. You became free. You freed yourself from their judgment, from their expectations, from the need to prove anything at all. And that's the real power, not in control, but in detachment. They tried to push your buttons, but you disconnected the entire panel. They tried to trap you in arguments, in rumors, in manipulation. But you became unreachable. And when someone becomes unreachable, they don't become invisible. They become mythic. And myths? They linger longer than facts. You didn't just leave a mark, you left a legacy, a story they now tell with trembling lips and darting eyes. And let's not forget the ones who watched, the silent witnesses. They saw how you didn't explode, how you didn't break. They saw how you stood still while the world spun madly around you. And now, they question everything they believed. They question who the villain was. They question why they ever doubted you. Because power recognized power, even in silence. You didn't just shift the narrative, you rewrote it. And not with ink, with absence. The loudest chapters are sometimes the ones with the fewest words. You left space, and in that space, people filled in their own guilt, their own shame, their own unraveling truths. You gave them nothing, and that nothing became a mirror they couldn't bear to look into. Now they seek closure. But closure isn't something you offer like a gift. It's something they have to earn. And you owe them nothing, because they already received everything they sowed. Every betrayal, every slight, every mocking laugh they once threw at your back. It's all returned to them now. Not by your hand, but by the hand of consequence, dressed in silence, cloaked in timing. You are not a destroyer. You are a reminder. A reminder that some people don't need to fight to win. Some just walk through the battlefield untouched, and the bodies fall from their own missteps. That's the role you've mastered. You don't react, you exist, and your existence alone disturbs their entire foundation, because they never imagined you could rise without noise. But here you are, elevated, respected, untouchable. Not because you begged for it, but because you earned it in the quiet. In the late nights when you stitched your soul back together without witnesses. In the mornings when you walked with fire in your chest, but didn't let it escape your mouth. That control. That's what they envy most. You never wanted revenge. That was their language. You wanted clarity. And clarity, once tasted, changes everything. You saw through their masks, through their performances. through the theater they built around your name. And you smiled, because you knew every act has its final curtain, and they never saw it falling. They fear your smile now, because it's not made of joy, it's made of certainty. You smile like someone who's already won, not because of what you did, but because of what you endured. Pain taught you how to breathe underwater, and now they're drowning in shallow puddles, wondering why you're still standing while they gasp. And still, you say nothing, because there's nothing left to say. Your silence is the thesis, your actions are the footnotes. Every step you take now is a sentence in a book they were never qualified to read. But they try. Oh, they try. They ask questions in circles. They whisper theories. They invent stories to explain the storm. But none of it touches you, because you've become something else. You are the ghost they created by trying to bury the wrong soul. You are the echo of everything they ignored, now amplified. You are what happens when someone decides not to break, but to become unbreakable. And they don't have the vocabulary for that. So they panic, they lash, they tremble. You didn't hit where it hurts once. You became what hurts. Not as punishment, but as proof. Proof that silence can be sharper than swords, that peace can be louder than protest, that detachment can destroy more completely than vengeance ever could. And now, the world begins to see. The same world that once turned away, they see who you are now, and they start to shift. They recalibrate, some in awe, some in shame, some in fear. And you don't pause, you don't slow down. Because this was never about them. This was about reclaiming yourself, piece by piece, flame by flame, silence by silence. They tried to write your ending, but they didn't know your pen bleeds ink made from every scar they gave you. And now, you write without hesitation, with authority, with depth. And every word is a blade, not aimed to harm, but to remind. Remind them that you survived. Remind them that you saw everything. Remind them that you don't yell. You decide. And when you decide, things break. Not because you forced them to, but because their structure was never meant to stand in the presence of someone like you. You don't seek collapse, but collapse follows where you stand, not by choice, by nature. So let them watch, let them whisper, let them pretend to not care. Because deep down, beneath all the noise, they know the truth. You didn't scream. You just became the consequence. And now, they wait. Not for your voice, but for your next silence. Because that silence has weight. It bends time, distorts perception, wraps around their minds like a wire tightening slowly with each tick. It is no longer absence, it is presence without permission. A fog that fills the corners of their thoughts, choking them where no hand ever touched. That's what you've become now. Not a person, not a presence, but a condition. You're not just remembered, you're experienced. In their sleep, you are the pause between breaths. In their plans, you are the variable they can't solve. In their smiles, you are the crack just beneath the surface. Because even now, even in silence, you are moving. They look at you and can't decide if you're peace or prophecy. Because you don't react, you don't chase, and yet they feel chased. By something deeper, something quieter. They feel hunted by the memory of what they thought you were and the reality of what you became. And in that dissonance, they unravel. See, this was never about revenge. That would be too small, too shallow. Revenge is for the broken, and you. You didn't break. You transformed. You swallowed every insult, every betrayal, every smirk of false superiority, and turned it into fuel, not for rage, but for redefinition. You didn't respond to their chaos. You let it burn itself out. Then you stepped over the ashes and became the fire. They made one fatal mistake. They thought pain would pause you. They believed your quiet was surrender. But your silence was never about them. It was construction. And now, you stand not as the echo of their harm, but as the architect of your own resurrection. They didn't anticipate that you would build from what they tried to break. Now you're unshakable. They whisper among themselves, trying to decode your blueprint. But your design was never made for them. Your path twists in angles their minds weren't built to follow. You don't just move forward, you ascend. And every step you take rises further out of their reach. They don't hate your strength, they fear your detachment. Because that detachment means they no longer matter, not as obstacles, not as allies, just static in your signal. Your silence isn't avoidance, it's refinement. Every moment you withheld a reaction, you sharpened your edge. You learned that some wars aren't won by engagement, but by extinction. You didn't argue. You became undeniable. They thought they'd ruined you, but all they did was remove the last distractions. Now the version of you that stands here is stripped of hesitation. You are not healing. You are weaponized clarity. That's why they're nervous. Because when someone chooses peace but can do violence, the world listens differently. Your calm isn't weakness. It's a warning. It's the silence of a blade before the swing, the moment the air stills before the lightning. You haven't spoken your last word, but they feel it coming, and the not knowing, that's the storm. They measure their words now, tiptoe around your name. They tell others not to mention you, not because they hate you, but because they remember. They remember what happened when they thought you were done. They remember the fallout of underestimation, and now, your name. It's not just a name, it's a repercussion. The very air around you has changed. You enter rooms, and energy shifts. People straighten, faces tighten, because presence like yours doesn't arrive unnoticed. It envelops, it confronts, and not with volume, but with gravity. You don't push people back, you pull truths forward. That's what really unnerves them. You don't destroy reputations, you reveal reality. You don't fight their lies, you outrun them with truth so undeniable, it doesn't need proof. You became the evidence. You are the story now, not told by others, but lived by you. And the people who doubted you, they are spectators now, watching your silence stretch like a shadow across the days they thought they owned. Watching as the world adjusts to your presence, reshapes itself to your rhythm. Because they tried to break you using noise. But noise is temporary. Silence, when mastered, is eternal. You redefined what it means to respond. You taught the universe that stillness can scream, that composure can conquer. And now, every quiet glance from you carries the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions. You don't need to declare war. You are the war. One that doesn't seek destruction, but revelation. You made your move without fanfare, without spectacle, without even looking back. And still, the impact reverberates. They can't find the moment it started. That's the beauty of it. You didn't strike at once. You erased them over time, drip by drip, second by second, until they were ghosts in a story they no longer controlled. But you control nothing. You influence everything, not by force, by presence. That's the difference. Force fades, presence permeates. You became the variable in equations they once mastered. You became the pause in sentences they thought they wrote. You interrupted not their story, but their illusion of authorship. And now, They read your name like a final chapter they never expected. They asked themselves, where did it all shift? And deep down, they know. It shifted the moment you chose yourself over their chaos. The moment you realized that power isn't in being heard, but in being undeniable. And now, undeniable is all you are. The chaos they summoned swallowed them, not you. You stood at the edge and watched the storm spin in circles, then walked through it untouched, because true strength doesn't react. It absorbs, recalculates, and creates. You are a creation now, born not from praise but from pressure, not from applause but from ashes. Your foundation isn't approval, it's purpose. And purpose doesn't waver. Purpose doesn't shout. It moves like a tide, relentless, silent, inevitable. And they are driftwood now, floating in the wake of what they tried to sink. Watching the horizon, you now rise beyond. You didn't yell, you just became. And that becoming, that's what they can't touch. Because it's internal, it's infinite. It's something no apology, no rumor, no cheap manipulation can reach. It's yours, built from within, forged in silence. And while they chase relevance, you embody resonance. They speak loudly, you speak less. And yet the world listens more. Because the world is tired of noise. It's searching for depth, for meaning, for proof that endurance means something. And you are that proof. Your journey was never about showing them, it was about knowing yourself. But the irony? In knowing yourself, you showed them everything. Their fragility, their performance, their dependence on spectacle. You held up a mirror with your silence, and they saw monsters in their own reflections. And now, your silence isn't the end. It's the beginning of a language they can't speak. A language of scars that never screamed, of progress that never pleaded, of dignity that never demanded. You are the whisper that breaks thunder, the calm that outlasts storms, the stillness that shifts worlds. So when they ask, where did you go? The answer is simple. You didn't go anywhere. You transcended. And they're still standing in the ruins, waiting for a scream that will never come. Because you didn't yell. You just hit where it hurts and walked away before the echo even began.